80% of us will one day die from some type of chronic disease that is, for the most part, pretty preventable. Another alarming stat, 80% of us are not active enough, if at all. It's not because they're not trying. We all know people who try every year. It's New Year's resolution, or within the first month or so, I think it's like 80 or 90% of them are no longer working out. We believe the missing piece is human connection. When you think about how can we solve this problem, you need to look at who is the small subset of the population who has already solved this problem. Professional athletes, billionaires, they outsource every single aspect of it. We're coming at this larger problem using fitness as the vehicle, but by having highly skilled coaches, they understand the other pieces well enough to support you. That's the reason Future exists.
Awesome. I'm live with Josh Bonhotal, former head of performance and founding team member at Future, and now a consumer VC at TXV. Did I say that right?
Yep, you got it.
Awesome. It's great to have you here. And for those out there that maybe don't know who you are, Josh, if you could do a quick introduction on yourself and Future, and then also, what you're up to now.
Sure. Yeah. So, kind of my quick background: grew up small town in Wisconsin, diehard basketball fan. My childhood was the Jordan years, so basically my entire life, you couldn't tell me any different. Like I was going to play for the Bulls one day, and basically my whole life revolved around that. Just playing basketball, watching basketball, doing whatever I could to learn about basketball, get better at basketball. And so that led me down a path to like really fall in love with the process of, getting stronger, getting fitter, faster, becoming a better athlete. And so, it was probably late high school where I realized, okay, maybe if somehow I don't play for the Bulls one day, there's another way in. And I realized that you could be a strength and conditioning coach, performance coach, for, professional teams, college teams. And, this is late 90s, early 2000s. So I'm dating myself a little bit, but, the role wasn't, nearly as prominent, back then. And so, I think I was fortunate of like, I sort of set my sights on that as being a career path for myself very early on. And even like I said, probably junior, senior year of high school, I was studying and looking at who were the people in positions that I admired and that I aspired to one day get to, with really the ultimate goal being, the Chicago Bulls. And, that kind of set my path where I tried to be very tactful and opportunistic throughout those late high school years, throughout college, just reaching out to people, anybody who knew more than I did, about training, athletes. And, it was one of those where basically like one opportunity led to the next, taking advantage of each one. Was fortunate. My first opportunity out of college was actually to go and work for the Bulls. And so started out, spent a year as an intern. They ended up hiring me on full time. So I spent the next 3 seasons as the assistant strength coach there with the Bulls. Had some really good years. My last year was the year Derrick Rose won MVP. So, got to be around that really high caliber athlete, but also a really high caliber, just, winning culture, not only for the history of, the 6 championships. And there was still a lot of that throughout the organization that permeated, but also to be a part of, ultimately, we had the best record in the NBA my last year in Chicago. And, I think that's shaped, I share that because I think that shaped a lot of my path and a lot of my approach, which is, from Chicago, I was then recruited to go take over as the director of performance for men's basketball with Purdue University. And it was something where, at least on the performance side, they had a very strong culture, like on the basketball side, and a tradition of winning and competing and playing hard. But it was almost non-existent on the training side. So it was a really unique opportunity for me, where I then spent the next 7 years really building a program, but building it from a blank slate from the ground up. And it was something where, just from everything that I'd learned, especially at the Bulls, not only, building a culture where the players were empowered to make decisions about their training. They were empowered to, not just empowered, but I expected them to lead and set the standard and define what our culture was. But then from a training perspective, I'm really proud of, we were, I think, kind of one of the first that had a very holistic, high performance approach to training, where it wasn't just, sets and reps in the weight room, but we were taking into account, um, you know, mental performance and nutrition dialed down to the individual. And, even, looking at very individualized data through, both wearables, GPS on our guys, force plates, all of these things to make, N=1 decision types of decisions to optimize their performance. And anyways, had a lot of success there, which ultimately, I guess, put me in a position to where, my last year at Purdue, I got an email midway through the year, from my now co-founders at Future, um, being recruited, and I had no idea, no clue about tech or startups or, any of that stuff. So at first, the email I got, it's actually kind of a miracle I even ended up responding to it, because at first I kind of thought it was spam, because it was one of those emails you get where it's just like, yeah, this sounds amazing, but it's way too good to be true, because it was like, first describing our founding team, our co-founders, which is, Rishi, who's our CEO, is literally an astrophysicist by trade, worked at NASA out of college, did a bunch of other crazy cool stuff in tech, and now is starting Future. Our CTO, Justin, was part of the team that built the first ever iPhone at Apple, and was literally the guy that invented FaceTime and iMessage. And then our COO at the time, who was the one recruiting me, was the first ever employee at a company called DoorDash, and led ops, from the time there was 8 of them in a garage to, I think, like 30 or 40,000 employees. And now this is 2018. I'm in West Lafayette, Indiana. So I don't even know if DoorDash is a real company, which turns out it is. And then Justin built the iPhone. It's like, this sounds amazing, but there's no way like this is real, but
And
I
what
was
was
in.
the pitch? What were they coming to you with, and maybe an overview also on, what Future does that they kind of sought you out to help build with them?
Yeah. So the pitch was, it was first, here's our team. We're doing something really cool that is going to change the world. You should come do this with us. And really what it was is, the problem that they had identified, and Rishi had identified, is, when you look at the current state of health in our country, but really in the world, it's a very reactive model of care. And ultimately 80% of us will one day die from some type of chronic disease that, is, for the most part, pretty preventable. But the problem is, nothing is being done about it on the front end. It's 80%, another alarming stat, 80% of us are not active enough, if at all. 75% of us, 3 out of every 4 people, are overweight or obese. And so, it's those things largely that are leading to this larger problem. But when you look at it, when you think about, okay, how can we solve this problem? It's we need to get out in front of it, because what's happening, or the state of things was, it's not until the point at which you are obese or you have diabetes or you have heart disease, hypertension, whatever it might be, where now your doctor essentially can tick a box and you qualify for all this specialized care and treatment and, probably medication, whatever. But in reality, at that point, it's largely, it's too late, and what's not happening is people managing their health on the front end. And so, Rishi, in, after sort of identifying this problem, then he looked at, and I think anytime you're trying to solve a problem at scale, you need to look at, who is the small subset of the population who has already solved this problem, regardless of the resources it took or whatever, and how can we model after that? And so naturally, he looked at professional athletes and he looked at billionaires, where, the commonality across both is there's no shortage of resources, that they can throw at managing their day-to-day health. And it turns out, across both those populations, um, any one of them across both those populations who cares at all about managing their day-to-day health is overwhelmingly successful. And their solution is the same. They outsource every single aspect of it. And so, for them, they actually have a constellation of experts. So it's not just they have their, performance coach or personal trainer who's managing all of their, fitness and working out, but they actually have a dietitian and a chef who are literally whatever they need to eat, the chef is making it and just putting it down in front of them. Eat this at this time. It's as simple as possible. They have, someone who's there with them managing their sleep, recovery, stress. They have their own, physical therapist or masseuse, or, and they have other people effectively setting the path for them, doing the thinking and guiding them along. And more than that, it's people who are in their lives with them every single day, 7 days a week, who get to know them, who understand, and can kind of ride the highs and lows of their life with them to help them be successful. And, when you look at the problem, especially in terms of people not being active, it's not because people are just lazy and they're not trying. Everyone, like, we're all trying. We all know people who try every year. It's New Year's resolution or whatever it is. But the sort of astounding thing is, overwhelmingly, when someone tries to pick up a new workout routine in particular, within about, the first month or so, I think it's like 80 or 90% of them are no longer working out at all. And so it's historically, there've been all these great, products and brands and, whatever it might be, but none of it sticks. And when you look at it, it's like, what is that missing piece? And kind of the bet. And so this was the pitch was, we believe that all of these other things are phenomenal, but the missing piece is human connection. The missing piece is a real person who also happens to be an expert, who actually gives a shit about you and takes the time to get to know you, to understand you, to get curious, to build a relationship, to form a bond and form trust with you, so that in those moments where life gets hard or life gets hectic and you otherwise would probably fall off, you have this person who's there in your corner, who knows you, who understands whether it's time to put an arm around you and support you, or if you need a little bit of tough love. But now I, as your coach, have earned the right to give you that tough love to where you'll receive it, because there's a level of care there and there's a level of trust. And so it was basically, and the pitch everything that you've been doing now over the last 10, 15 years with the Bulls at Purdue, what you've done with Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, people like that, um, we want to build that and use technology to make it accessible and affordable to anyone, anywhere. Because ultimately our bet was that person does not need to be physically there with you every day. They just need to be in your life. And technology allows you to do that, which it didn't previously. And so, obviously, also, who better than the guy who invented FaceTime, who spent the last 10, 15 years thinking about how do we connect people digitally to form really strong and lasting relationships. So the pitch was, one, we have this really good idea. Nobody knows if it'll actually work because, we were seed stage at that time. We hadn't really like built the product yet. So it was, one, figure out how the heck does this thing even work? And so my role was, effectively to take what I'd been doing, figure out how you adapt it to this digital environment so that you're able to build these really strong relationships with people. You're able to meet them where they're at in terms of their workouts and what they need, and adapt the program in real time as, like if you have kids and all of a sudden your kid gets sick, well, guess what? You're probably not going to the gym that day. But if you have me as a coach in your corner, I can say, hey, you know, I know you're super stressed, but
Try doing a shorter workout or something like that.
exactly. And by the way, I dropped in a short little, body weight workout that you can take 10 minutes for yourself while you're at home and you can do. So it's like, we're setting the path. And then part two, to wrap up on this point, was go build the team. Because we had, and Rishi had told investors at that point, we're not just going to pair you with somebody random. In fact, we're going to pair you with someone that typically only these elite athletes or billionaires would even have access to, let alone be able to afford. So it was like, we're going to go out and we're going to get people that come from those worlds where they've trained pro college Olympic athletes, where they're highly educated, and all of those things. And, so fast forward, I've hired several hundred coaches. They're all full time with us at Future, salaried. I think it's something like 70% of them do come from pro college Olympic style backgrounds. Better than 60% of them have their master's degree and beyond. And the reason why we've indexed on people like that is because we're coming at this larger problem using fitness as the vehicle, but by having these really high level, highly skilled coaches who come from environments where they've been part of that constellation of experts. They understand the other pieces well enough to support you without, going outside their scope. And really that's what we've looked at is the five things that dictate the length and quality of our lives are quite simple. It's how we move, how we eat, how we sleep, how we manage our stress. And then the fifth one is adherence to taking medications. If we're on medication, are we actually taking those medications? But especially for us, the first four we can largely control. And a coach, like what I'd done at Purdue and with the Bulls, is the person who does that with you. They're the one who helps you think about building healthy habits. And then again, like I said, it's centered around your workout. So with Future, we pair you digitally with someone like myself, who is then in your life with you every single day through your phone. They're building you custom workouts every single week that are fully guided with audio and video of every exercise, every movement as you're doing it, while you're doing it. Your coach is checking in with you pretty much every single day, but also you're able to reach out to your coach at any time and get a response pretty much right away. So it's this expert in your pocket, but it's this expert who very quickly becomes someone just you consider a friend.
Yeah. It's a fascinating business. and it is pretty complex on the back end what you all have built with the different moving pieces and parts, but you've made the experience and the technology really seamless and easy. You land there, Future learns a little bit more about you, your goals, your lifestyle. Do you have access to gym equipment? Do you work out in a gym? Do you work out at home? What kind of equipment do you have? And do you want someone who's a little bit more motivational? Do you want someone who's more like a sergeant? Things like that. And then you get a couple, I think it's like top three choices. And then you choose, and then immediately you're prompted to do this FaceTime call or schedule a FaceTime call that gets on your calendar. And so the coordination is super seamless. And I'm curious to know sort of where is the traction today with the business and the company in terms of size, scale? You mentioned hiring a couple hundred coaches. And then, where is it not, I don't want to say too good to be true, but where are there still limitations with this model? When you talk about your own experience at the Bulls and at Purdue, you're there, you're in person, you can build that relationship in person with the athletes, you can see them move. And doing it asynchronously is great, but I would imagine that there's certain considerations or things to think about because it also is presents other challenges and difficulties.
Yeah. And I think on that note, it's it's interesting because in a lot of ways, especially when I first came on board 5 years ago, and it's still sort of in that idea stage, and we're trying things and we're building it out. I think there were a lot more pros, a lot more advantages than there were cons, which was actually really surprising to me. And, I'll say, and this is, and now to be clear, I'm comparing this now to what the other 99% of us have historically, been able to do or have access to, which is, ultimately the comparison here for like you and me, John, would be us going out and hiring a personal trainer. First of all,
Personal trainer or watching videos on YouTube or doing boutique classes or like fitness classes that are you don't really get that personalized attention.
yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. And so, I think again, when you unpack the problem, there is absolutely the 20% of the population, which, actually I think you and I probably err more towards that bucket where it's like one way or another, we've sort of found a way to manage our fitness and our health. Now we can probably optimize it. It's probably not optimal, but like we've gotten by. Like whether I have a coach or I don't, I'm probably going to be doing something that's active. Now, is it the best thing? Am I adapting it the right way? Honestly, probably not. But I'm at least, I'm at least doing something. And so,
Yeah, it's not
um,
personalized. It's a
exactly,
little bit more
exactly.
like it fits within a certain bucket
Mhm, mhm.
because people have told you it's good and within certain parameters, but it's not necessarily tailored to your specific needs and goals and body type and your limitations, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when we look at this other 80%, which is that's the reason Future exists. We certainly are and will continue to help that 20% that would be active whether we existed or not. And with them, it's really optimizing everything that they do. But with that 80%, it's like, again, they have tried, as you mentioned, they have tried going to different classes. They have tried the streaming services. They have tried the Peloton or whatever it might be. They've probably even tried having a personal trainer. And, what happens is ultimately, if it's any of those other things where it's not a real person, it's not a personal trainer, it's an app that's just content that's coming at me. And now I select whatever workout I do, or it's Peloton or it's whatever. When my routine changes, when my life changes, and all of a sudden I kind of stop working out for a week, and then a week becomes 2 weeks, you know, nobody is checking in with me. Nobody's checking in to say, "Hey, John, you know, how are you doing? What's up? What's going on? How can I, not just how can I support you, but hey, I know you're in the middle of a move right now, so you're super busy. No worries at all. I dropped some workouts in the app for you that are just like super basic, 5 minutes of stretching if you want to still like keep something going." And what that does is two things. One, because you have built now presumably a relationship with your coach, and you value them as a person, and they care about you, you sort of don't want to let them down. And also, like, there's a very strong psychological phenomenon around, forget exactly what it's called, but it's basically like the watcher phenomenon. But basically, like, if we know someone else is watching us, we're more likely to follow through and do the thing that we said we were going to do. So inherently, even though I, Josh, as your coach, am not physically there with you, I'm connected to you through technology. And in the case of Future, you wear an Apple Watch, or now, we have an Android version as well. So, I'm actually able to see, not only did you work out, but what did you do in that workout. So there's a level of, like, you kind of know someone that you care about, and you want them to sort of like respect you, and like whatever you want to kind of please them, is seeing what you're doing. So one, it's helping you be accountable, but then two, again, it's, if you were going through that move on your own, or you were going through, maybe you just broke up with your significant other, that's a huge life moment. Now you're going through that on your own, and you got to come up with the motivation yourself to go work out, or you have to figure out, well, I'm not going to do the hour-long workout, but man, what do I do now? And so, you're kind of left to do it on your own. And then even with, a personal trainer in person, which, by the way, is great. The downside of that is, typically for most of us, if we're lucky, with the cost of it, especially in major cities, that could be $100 on up to $200 for one session. So it's like, if we're lucky, maybe we're able to pay for one session a week, and one session on its own is not enough. And within personal training, even with the best of the best personal trainers that I might go see in person, I'm busy, they're busy. So it ends up becoming a very transactional relationship by nature. It might still be enjoyable, but it's literally, you know, we see each other for the hour that we're together. We probably have great conversation, great workout, whatever else. But when we finish that hour, you go on about your life, and I go on about my life. And I'm sort of an afterthought, as are you. Whereas with this, and so, kind of fast forward to the biggest sort of moment for me that really clicked was, yes, we're not there physically, but on average, and this is held for the life of our company for the last 5+ years, on average, our coaches are trading nearly 5 text messages every single day with their clients across the board. And it's not like, as a coach, I'm just blowing you up. It's like 51-49% in terms of who's sending, who's initiating the conversation. So it's a very balanced relationship in that way. And, like, very quickly, what it turns into as well. And this is for two reasons. One, it's the it's the qualities that we look for in the coaches that we hire. And you know, to me, I always have looked at, and across the company, we've always looked at, the expertise is table stakes. Like, I mean, we have coaches who have their PhD, who have their DPT. Like I said, 60% have their masters. They all have their undergrad. Many of them have like a alphabet soup of certifications behind their name. And so the expertise is like we sort of expect that. That's table stakes. That's the 49%. But you can get that many places. The 51%, the sort of secret sauce is who those people are as human beings. It's the values that they possess. And the biggest one is, they are givers, so they do for others, they help others, you know, with whenever they can, with whatever they can, because they can, just to help without expecting anything in return. And they have the humility to kind of serve and put others first, which is, I think a critical ingredient of this. And so with taking that approach, um that's the piece that, you know builds that trust with a client to keep them going. Is, I'm not just asking you about what equipment do you have, what do you like doing for a workout, what are your goals around working out, but like, who are you as a person? And I'm trying to get to know that, without being nosy, to whatever extent you want to open up, and vice versa. But that's the exact same thing.
Mostly over
Why?
text, or is
M
that also phone calls?
Combination, yeah. So, I mean, it's, the majority of the communication takes place over text, but, and as you mentioned, kind of the first sort of kickoff of getting to know one another is a FaceTime call, and we're very intentional in that call on our side of, what, how we want to approach that call, not just to learn all those things about your workout, but to learn about you, and to like I always talk about forming a tribe. And so it's, in forming a tribe, and this goes back millions of years, we're sort of psychologically wired as human beings to view things in the standpoint of tribes. We view other people as being us, in other words, part of my tribe, or them, meaning another tribe. And like, our sort of evolutionarily wired instinct is, if someone is from another tribe, then potentially they're a threat, and that's kind of how I'm wired. And so when you think about human connection and human relationships, what you want to do first and foremost to build trust is to form a tribe. And so how you form a tribe is one of the things that we talk about is, um, turning over rocks to collect dots and then later connect those dots. So turning over rocks is getting curious about the other person. It's taking an active interest in that person and genuinely wanting to learn about you. And so it's, it could be things like, where are you from? Where did you grow up? What's your favorite, like, do you like sports? What's your favorite sports team? What's your favorite movie? How many kids do you have? Kids? How many kids?
Was this taught to you when you were at the Bulls or Purdue? Like, was it part of your training, or was it something that you kind of picked up as you went along to become better at your job kind of naturally and now have brought it to future?
So no, it was not part of my training. In fact, it wasn't part of my schooling. I don't even think it was part of my master's degree. And I think that's
Like
the thing. And again, where I talk.
good interpersonal skills and
Mm-mm. I
curiosity.
mean, maybe some basic, psychology courses, but even that, it's like, if you do your undergrad or master's degree, it's just you're taking a course in psychology. You're not necessarily, taking it as it relates to coaching and building relationships and stuff like that. I think, for me, where I've been really fortunate throughout my career and even early on, was I always sought out people who I believed to be the best in the world at whatever it was that they do, whether it was direct to, strength and conditioning and the technical, scientific, physiological pieces of it, or if it was other areas that touched it. And, so I've been mentored by, literally some of the top experts in the world across multiple domains, and I've come up under some of the most legendary coaches in elite sport. And so I learned by watching them. I learned from, kind of how they poured into me. And especially I think starting out in the NBA really shaped my approach as a coach, because in the NBA, everyone you're coaching, they're all multimillionaires. And the only thing that you have to potentially hold them accountable as a coach, like as it relates to their workouts, is I could fine a guy if like they didn't, they need to get, I think, 8 workouts each month. So if they don't get 8 workouts in the month, and really it should be 2 to 3 each week in terms of lifts.
Like find them, like punish them with money?
With money, yeah, yeah. So I
Oh, good.
can, yeah, so I can say, "Hey, you haven't got your, required number of workouts with me, so your next paycheck is gonna be, $20,000 lighter."
Imagine we did that in
And
imagine we did that in the US.
I know it. I know it. Well, so here's the thing. And I learned this from my boss and my mentors with the Bulls, Al Vermeil and Eric Helland, is we never find guys, no matter what. Because ultimately we looked at it and it was like, if we have to find a guy, that just means we're not very good at our job. And we've not done what we need to do to build a relationship with that individual and to build trust, and also to meet them where they are. And so, it was like, even if we might find a guy, all that's going to do over the long term is it's going to further alienate them. By the way, $20,000 to a lot of these guys would be probably the same as like if I was training you, John, and I said, "Hey, we got this conditioning run today," and you're like, "Man, I'm not doing it. I don't feel like it." And I say, "Okay, well, you owe me $5 if you don't do it." You'd be like, "Well, like $5, like I could have bought a coffee with it or
Yeah,
whatever,
I'll
but
Venmo you 10
whatever,
right now.
here you go." Yeah, exactly. And you'll kind of yeah, exactly. And you'll Venmo me 10 because you'll be like, "Yeah, and screw you, here's 10." But now that's fracturing the relationship. That's fracturing, kind of the trust. And so in that world, another thing too for me, you got to think, when I first started with the Bulls, I was 22 years old. And so several of my players, I mean, like I had players who had kids almost as old as me. They're like 37, 38, 39 years old. They've been in the NBA almost as long as I've been alive. They've been, NBA champions. They've been all-stars. They've made probably 100, this is back in the day, so the contracts weren't as big, but they've made, probably $100 million in their lifetime. And so I can have all the credentials in the world behind me. I could be the smartest dude on the planet, but if I can't connect with that person, if I can't understand who and what is important to them, and understand that, and then connect those dots and take an interest in those things, then they're never going to listen to me. And so, eh, you know, taking that as my foundation and going to Purdue, Purdue was an environment, and really kind of is an environment at the college level, where there are consequences if you don't do what's sort of required. And especially when I started at Purdue, it was very much a culture of like, if you're a coach in college, by and large, you're a dictator. At the end of the day, with college athletes, it's, you do, you do what I'm telling you to do because I said so. And so, I think this is something that then we've.
Quick question for you. When you when you think about what Future does, and you mentioned those like 4 pillars, like including like sleep, and I don't think you said hydration, but I think you said nutrition, and you think about what Future is doing in the movement and fitness space. But then do you think that's ever like either siloed, or, if you need those other pillars in order to like live well, the sleep, the food, do you imagine that Future will eventually do those as well? Or do you imagine that there will be other types of products like Future in those verticals where people have like this more accessible form of coaching or training? in some of those other important verticals of life?
Yeah. I think it's a combination. And so going back to the original vision, and especially when Rishi looked at it, and you saw it was, ultimately these athletes, these billionaires, they have a constellation of experts. And so for us, I think from the beginning we realized that if we tried to attack it all at once, and build that constellation right away, we're going to fail as a business, and we're going to help nobody, because the first thing that we need to do is we need to effectively disrupt and also define coaching, and make coaching sort of accessible, and help people understand even what it is and what the value of that is. And I think also why we started there, again, was because the within it turns out, when you, like I said, when you index on really high level performance coaches, again, they've studied all these other domains, even just like what we were just talking about. Like, once I started working with the Bulls in Purdue, I spent like probably 95% of my continuing education, every book I read, every conference I went to, was all around like psychology and leadership and communication, and that's what your best of the best coaches do, is they're sort of, very hungry lifelong learners. And so they educate, because, as you mentioned, it's like it's very easy for these things to be in a silo. And I think oftentimes we even approach our lives as though these things are siloed. But the best coaches understand that all of these things are ultimately inputs on your body, which then result in the outputs of your performance or your health. So even if I'm coming at it from fitness, lifting weights, running, conditioning, cardio, whatever you want to call it, um, even just if I want to think about making those improvements better, I need to understand what you need to eat in order to optimize your strength gains or your cardiovascular gains. I need to understand, what needs to happen around your sleep and how best to support and guide you there. I need to understand, again, you as a human, and the stress that you're under, and kind of your mental sort of stress, mental performance, to be able to talk with you and to you in a certain type of way based upon, where you're at, because that's going to impact not only your performance but also your health, as well as the strategies that I give you. And so anyways, we started there with coaching because we knew if we hired the right types of people and coaches, and then internally also we poured into them and we poured into each other to learn more and more about these other areas. Again, I can coach you. And it's the same thing I did with someone like Derek. I'm focused on kind of our training, but every single day he's asking me questions about what he should eat. And I'm not trying to be a dietitian, but I know enough to know how to help him with just basic habits. Hey, like, and I'm the one sitting there eating meals with him, frankly. So I'm like, Derek, why are you eating that? No, take that back. Get this, and I'm talking to him about, man.
Yeah, I love that. So, what I'm hearing is essentially like you guys have focused on the fitness component, given also your background and sort of like lowest hanging fruit. But one of the bigger components of behavior change is the psychology. So, if you build a platform where you guys really get that human to human relationship down, then you can add really whatever you want on top of that, because the core, the 80% of it that you have to get down is that relationship component, and then from there you can add in nutrition, sleep, whatever else you'd like, because now that client trusts their coach as this advisor or person of that is helping them succeed and thrive.
Yeah, exactly. And you hit it. It's that EQ. And so kind of leading with empathy and EQ, and you know, again, like taking an interest in this person. And through that, now that's how you're able to kind of have an impact on them and their lives. And so, our bet was, again, starting out with the right people as coaches, we can have a broader impact on our clients than just working out, again, within our scope. But then ultimately the vision is and always has been, as we do that, and sort of we prove and establish coaching and that it works, we earn the right over time to more formally ladder up into these other areas of your health. So now, as we build out coaching, and I think we're very close to it right now, is now we earn the right to start to think about, okay, how can we actually like formally, and much more specifically, like granularly in detail, help you with your nutrition and help you with your sleep and help you with, your stress and kind of your recovery. And so that's sort of always been the vision, is ultimately how do we build and grow from having the performance coach to having the constellation of experts. And so, to get back to your original question, um, I do think it'll probably be a combination of, like, I think there's elements of it that certainly we're poised to be able to build ourselves at Future, to support people in that way, and to, again, offload the responsibility of figuring out what I'm going to eat or how I need to sleep, or whatever, and make it as simple as possible. So I think it'll be a combination of what we can build out internally, and people we can bring on to help us do that, as well as when you look at the space as a whole, there's a bunch of, and you and I were talking before this, there's a bunch of just absolutely incredible companies that are building across nutrition or mental health or like sleep, especially, even down to like as specific as hydration. So I think you also look at it and you go, well, we've spent the last 5+ years being the best in the world, figuring out how to become and now be the best in the world at coaching. There's other founders and companies who've done that with sleep. So how can we partner? And it helps both of us.
Something I want to make sure that we get to in this conversation, Josh, as well, is like you've had these moments in your career. You left Purdue and the coaching in the athletic space, in the professional athletic space, in order to then now join a consumer fitness company. And then most recently, you've made the decision to jump into the investing side. How did you make this last decision to jump into VC? And what are you most excited about when you're looking at the fitness, wellness, performance space outside of just what Future has done?
Yeah. It's and I talk about this a lot, but every single opportunity that I've had throughout my career, I can always point back to a relationship that has led me there, and so it's ultimately no different to what's led me to get into the venture world, is forming a relationship very early on while I was at Future with one of one of our earliest investors, at TXV, Marcus Stroud. And he was someone who, in just trying to support us as a company, spent a ton of time with me early on, helping to kind of mentor me and helping me to learn and navigate the challenges that come with scaling a company from seed to now Series C. And especially with my background, always being in sport and strength and conditioning, like, I had no idea what I was getting into. And so, I think that relationship, as that matured, it was exposing me to the venture capital world, and it was something that, just I was really intrigued by. It was something that, like, I didn't even know what it was when I was first joining Future. Like, I remember, Rishi and everyone recruiting me to join, and they're talking about VCs and venture cap, and I'm like, first of all, I didn't even know what VC stood for. And then once they're like, "Oh, venture capitalists," I'm like, I still like, yeah, I have no idea what that is. And so it's kind of wild because if you look back, even, starting out, I was going to play in the NBA, and then instead I was a strength coach, but like that was my dream job, and like I'd made it. I knew nothing about tech or startups or any of that. And it's just, I think wherever you go along the way, just really being conscious to be present where you are, be where your feet are, and do the best job you possibly can wherever you are today. To be able to like pour into those around you. And I think part of that is you're constantly learning and exposing yourself to things. And it was like that's been my journey. Like that's what's led to future. And now with TXV, it was something over the past kind of few years I started to see, like, as future was evolving, and my role within future was very much evolving. It was like we as a company, as future, I think, sit at the center of the ecosystem of like really the human performance space, because we're pairing you with a coach. So all of these other, companies that are building, whether it's wearables like Aura Ring or, Levels or whatever it might be, or it's connected fitness like Peloton and Tonal and all of that, future actually complements, supports, and enhances, those things. So my role was moving into a position with future where a big part of it was having relationships with those companies and those founders, to, share ideas and hopefully, one day maybe partner together. And then naturally, as I was learning more and more about the venture space, I realized I'm like, man, for everything that I've done personally, individually to date at Future, if I can step into that space, it gives me an even bigger platform to inspire and create opportunities for many, many more people, which has always been sort of my like purpose in not just my career, but in life. And I also realize I'm like, man, now like we're a really large company actually at Future, and we have like a whole bunch of specialists, and also the every single coach I've ever hired, I've hired with the intent of this person is going to be better than me in at least one thing, and this person is going to replace me in some way. And over time, as you do that, you build a team where it's like, honestly, probably even the last like year and a half, 2 years, I don't think anybody even noticed if I left because we have such a strong team and they're all like owning things and doing it way better than I ever could. So, even as it relates to supporting future, I'm like, man, I can actually do a whole lot more there. But, as you mentioned of like what gets me excited about the space is like, I think people in general now, like health is in the front of our minds largely, especially the pandemic kind of put it there. And people for the first time probably in history are truly at younger ages prioritizing our health. And I think it's the perfect sort of moment in history of you have that where it's front of mind for everyone. I mean, think about it. You have people like Andrew Huberman and Peter Attia in this that are like celebrities in today's world, like that never happened before. A doctor is a celebrity. You know what I mean? It's so you have that, like people want this now. And then technology has advanced to a point that we're doing things like future where now you can have a coach no matter, and your coach lives in California but you live in freaking Maine, and they're talking to you every day, and you get all this individualized data. So it's the, bringing it all together and being in a position to do that.
As you think about the consumer space for fitness, wellness, performance, and you are now going to be investing in these companies, is there anything that you could share so far where you have a little bit of a contrarian view, where maybe the market doesn't believe it yet, or things that haven't really caught fire, but you're super bullish on and excited about? And you can feel free to name specific companies that you've admired or you've seen or you think people should keep an eye on.
Yeah. um I think it's kind of it's twofold. One, it's as you mentioned before, moving beyond the siloed approach to an integrated approach. So I think it's going to be um, not only existing brands that might kind of operate in some of those different silos, having the awareness and foresight to build in a way where they're partnering and or integrating with other companies building in the space, and basically like not having the ego or arrogance to think that like any one of us as a company by ourselves is the solution to solve this larger problem. Because if as a space entirely, if we operate traditional business models where typically it's like kind of death to every single one of my competitors or anyone that's even like tangentially associated, then I don't think we solve this problem. So it's, having companies that have that positive sum mentality. But I think also what that's doing is it's creating a space for like I keep waiting for the right companies to come in and be the companies or the software or whatever it might be, that connects all of these tools and technologies. And so I think there's a huge opportunity there. Um, and then the other part of it, and I was just talking with one of my best friends about this the other day, is we are way too focused on outputs. Like everything that's being built and even all of your wearables and all of that, cool. It gives me a million different outputs, but we need to focus on the inputs because the outputs only change if we focus on the inputs. Now the outputs can be helpful to start to direct me to make the right decisions about what are the inputs that I need to prioritize or change, or kind of how to manipulate those things. But I think if you look at kind of the space even over the last 5 to 10 years, you saw this big shift of a lot of things that ultimately, if you really think about it, at the end of the day, they're trends, no different than the last 100 years. So you saw the rise of things like Peloton and Tonal, which I think has been great. The what was missed there is like in building a Peloton or in building a Tonal, I think was this like kind of naive belief that like this is the solution, but it's not. It's a tool. It's a very necessary tool. But and so because it's been built in that way, I think it's like that's why you see it the same way as you've seen like the Suzanne Summers training back in the day, and the Nordic track, and the it's like it's just the Bowflex. It's just now become another trend. Now I believe those things will ultimately be here to stay, but they're a tool. They're not the end solution. And then in terms of especially inputs versus outputs, it's now we have all these wearables, whether it's our Apple Watch, Levels Patch, Oura Ring, Whoop, whatever, Garmin, and that's all great. And I think that's where, through the pandemic, people went first to like all these connected fitness devices or like streaming solutions, content based platforms, is like, this is my solution to manage my health. And then they realized over time that, it kind of worked, but not really. And so then the next big wave was, well, let me get like really personalized about the data and information that I have about my own health. So now I'm getting, again, Oura Ring, Apple Watch, whatever, and I'm measuring every last thing. And that's great, but it's all outputs. And I get, these really clean dashboards that are telling me all these different things about how I slept or my heart rate variability or how stressed I am or whatever. And then I look at them like, this is great. But it's overwhelming, and I don't know what the heck to do with this. And so, I think it brings it back to, and where I'm excited is, how can we start to use things like machine learning and technology and that sort of thing, and building out a lot more intelligence around algorithms to make these insights more actionable. Right now, it's like they're cool, they're interesting, but it doesn't tell me, effectively what I need to do, or if it does, it's not personal to me.
I love that. Yeah, bridging the gap and integrating these different technologies and tools in order to give people a little bit more insight into and prescriptions around what they should actually be doing. Because
If you're not changing and improving behavior, it doesn't matter. It's not gonna make a difference no matter how much data I have.
or you might be changing behavior, but focusing on the wrong
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
Because
exactly,
you're looking at the
exactly.
output and not the
Because again,
yeah.
you have to your original point, you have to put it in context of the whole holistic view, and even again, right now with a lot of these different wearables, it's just focused on sleep, or it's just focused on elements of nutrition. And sleep as an example is a very loaded equation and problem, as is underneath that heart rate variability. I mean, it's Pandora's box of things, of inputs that can lead to the output. And even things like recovery. You need to recover. Okay, cool. So what type of recovery? It might mean nutrition, it might mean sleep, it might mean soft tissue, it might mean, some type of modality. You can't just kind of shotgun approach. But it's still, I think things are moving in the right direction, because broadly, again, people are at least thinking about recovery as a category and as something that's important to them. People are finally realizing that sleep is important, even if they don't yet know how to adjust and optimize it for that, for them. Because obviously now you get into all types of stuff of like your chronotype and all these strategies to optimize your sleep. But you have to start somewhere. You have to start general in order to go specific. And so overall, that's why I'm encouraged on the space, because I think the technology is there, which is getting us broadly as a population to start to make some of these improvements generally, but it's still very much it's a one size fits most type of approach, and where it needs to ultimately go to truly make this impact on the length and quality of our lives is an n equals one approach, which is what you see at the elite levels of sport.
Yeah. Josh, this has been awesome. It's super exciting to hear about your journey from professional athletics and coaching to future and now venture. I'm really excited to see some of the companies that you bring through the door and invest in. And where can people learn more? One, anything else you'd like to leave us with before we sign off today? I know we went a little over, so I appreciate you extending the time. And then any yeah, so anything you want to leave us with, and then where can people follow you, learn more about what you're building, just so folks can stay tuned.
Um, I don't know if I really have anything, in terms of to leave you with. I mean, I think my two biggest things, just sort of mottos to life and sort of being successful, is just like showing up is a skill. So it's like, whatever it is you do, the ability to just do that thing over and over and over and keep showing up, like, ultimately eventually leads to really good things. So whether that's your career or your health or it's just, it's take one small step. It's like everything big starts small. And I think especially as it relates to our health, I do think that's one of the biggest blockers, is at the individual level, especially if we've not had success. We try to do it all at once. We try to, get, and we try to make it much bigger than it is, when really it's like, if I haven't been active at all, literally the only thing I need to do is start by just getting up off my couch and going, walk to the end of my block and back. And then maybe, walk around the block. And so I think people fail because they start too big. So start small, keep showing up. And then just, having a abundance mentality, positive sum mindset, I think is it's something, build a community, be a giver, help others, and you're going to be successful in your life and career. And I think that's what's going to make this space as a whole successful, is that we come at it with this abundance mindset and positive sum mentality to make this impact on millions and hopefully one day billions of people's lives. And as for me, I try to share a lot of my thoughts around these types of things on Twitter, in particular at J Bonhotal, and then my LinkedIn, just my name. I try to put a lot of stuff on there, and really encourage everyone to check out Future for yourself. Our website is future.co, CO. And if you want to just try out a free month for yourself and see if it's something that helps you with no strings attached, go to future.co/Josh. And that'll get you a free month. And if you don't like it, cancel at the end of the month. But it's something, obviously I'm biased, but I'm very, very proud of what we've built, because I know that when people find us and come to us, our coaches literally on a daily basis are, changing people's lives, which has been, it's been absolutely incredible. So obviously I want to spread the word on that.
I love that. And then TXV's website, if folks want to learn more.
Yeah, so TXV, and we're in the middle of a kind of rebrand on our website. So depending on when you search, it might not be live yet, but TXV dot partners. And like I said, we really sit at the center of like the human performance space and where that intersects with, like consumer health and sports. So it's all the companies that are building things to improve how we move, how we eat, how we sleep, and how we manage our stress.
Love it. Josh, this has been a lot of fun. I'm excited to hopefully do a workout next time in person.
Yeah, let's do it.
And congrats on everything. And thanks for taking the time to share your experience and insights. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate it. It was fun.